right, thank you for being here about overreacting. The key takeaway I want you to go home with is that all of your overreactions make sense, and learning to understand why you're having the reaction you're having is what will help you overreact less often. A lot of people think that they will give themselves like too much leeway or let themselves off the hook or whatever by trying to understand it, but it's the exact opposite. And it's not true that you are too sensitive, too reactive, too impulsive, too grumpy, whatever label you've beat yourself up with for the last few decades. That's just not true. Okay. So I'm going to do my best to prove that over the next 10 or 15 minutes. So the key points is understanding your own values and what your other triggers are, running a needs assessment on yourself and paying attention to your current status, and knowing how to calm yourself effectively and complete the stress cycle, opposed to stuffing it down or pretending things are fine. Hopefully, we're developing the skills to never do that again. And this is actually another key point. What even counts as an overreaction? So, fight or flight and freeze and fawn are healthy reactions that protect us. They can protect our nervous system by reducing our inputs. They can prepare our body to save ourselves or others. It's clearly not an overreaction when there's an imminent threat. It might be an overreaction if it's an email that you need to answer or a phone call you need to make, and it's happening multiple times a day or multiple times a week where you're going into that fight or flight mode over everyday life experiences. But that's still debatable depending on how if it's happening, right? So stop expecting yourself to be calm all the time. Regulated doesn't mean calm. And just because you're having feelings doesn't mean you're dysregulated, and it doesn't mean you're overreacted. You're not a robot, and that wouldn't be a great way to live your life, even if you could be. Getting upset is perfectly healthy. It gets unhealthy when it's chronic and disproportionate. So, something happens that's stressful, our adrenaline and other stress hormones go up, and then they go back down and get metabolized. And then the next thing happens, right? That's life. But if it's like jacking up, staying really high, not really going back to baseline, you'll develop chronic stress. That's when it gets unhealthy. It depletes us. It makes us more vulnerable to future stress, which is why it leads to poor concentration, memory issues, irritability, frustration. It impacts your sleep quality, and then eventually burnout. So that's why we don't want chronic stress. So we have two levers to reduce stress. We can reduce the number or power of stressors that activate you, and you can complete the stress cycle when you have been activated. So if you imagine a bucket and you want to prevent it from overflowing, you can either add less water or you can remove water more quickly. So there's two different levers here to help that we're going to talk about. And the threat bucket concept doesn't just apply to having an overreaction like emotionally. A lot of people have body issues that crop up when your threat bucket is full because of inflammation, because of muscle tension. There's all these good reasons for it, but you may not relate to blowing up or melting down. You might relate to my lower back acting up or a tricky knee. And yes, there's an old injury. Yes, there's a good reason why that's the thing that acts up. But those injuries, those threats got added to your threat bucket along with the all-nighters, over drinking, going weeks without drinking actual water. You're paying for all those things that you used to get away with now. So that threat bucket has varying levels for different life histories, and those old injuries, those old things that have been bothering you, those are just part of the threat bucket. They're not the whole story. So that's why sometimes your back hurts, sometimes it doesn't. All right, so reducing stressors. So one way is by understanding what is causing the stress, by understanding your expectations and values. So think about a recent time you felt stress. An overreaction doesn't mean that you blew up or melted down. It can be on the inside. Like just the other day, I got really annoyed with my kid and I kept that on the inside. I did not get grumpy to him, but I was still feeling like overreacting internally. And so it's like, what happened? I want you to think about what else is going on in your life. Was that situation a last straw? Was it weighty on its own, or both? And then that brings us to which of your values or expectations were threatened by the situation. So if you have an expectation that's frequently unmet, that can mean that we're holding others and ourselves to really high standards. We're holding ourselves to that standard. We want to hold other people to that standard. That's optional. You might want to keep it, you might not, but if it's something that's causing stress frequently because other people aren't meeting your expectations, something needs to shift there of how you're making the requests, how you're holding the boundary, or what the expectations are. And it's interesting that we have two levels of expectations. On the one hand, I actually expect my kid to keep track of his shoes, and I know that because I get exasperated if he doesn't know where they are. But if you told me, oh my God, your kid lost his shoes today, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I have one expectation that he that is against my actual experience. I know that that is something that is going to happen, and that's an adjustment I can recognize and make, and I frequently do, because I'd rather be amused in the evenings when my kid's riling up the dog at bedtime than be annoyed every single night when the thing I knew was going to happen happens, right? So if somebody is doing something consistently and you're consistently being annoyed at it, you're actually the foolish one in the situation because you keep going in expecting a different reality. So it's kind of a tangent, but that double layer of expectation is something to keep an eye on, because it will create a lot more peace if your life versus like gritting your teeth or scolding or any of the other reactions we get when people are not meeting our expectations. So this is a short list of needs, and it's biased towards the ones that I see people not having met most often. My own are at the top. If I'm overreacting, it's most likely because I feel like something dangerous is happening. Next most likely is if I'm feeling at odds with someone that I think I'm supposed to be on the same team with. That need for collaboration is very high with me. And then third most often, if I feel like I'm being controlled unfairly. And that's also my kid's most important need. If he's not acting right, he's probably feeling controlled. He needs more autonomy, and then we'll be collaborating again. And then both of our needs are getting met, and things are much more smooth in that situation. So I don't know if you resonate with any of these as primary needs. There's needs list all over the place to look at, and there's quizzes you can take. But knowing what your top three are, just knowing that most of the time when I get annoyed, it's because one of these three things isn't getting met. That is going to be your biggest clue. Like, for example, have a lot of people who are very competent and highly skilled. And so that's an identity of theirs. When they suddenly feel incompetent at something, it is threatening their very identity, and then they overreact. That fills that threat bucket up really fast. Similar with people who have a need for predictability or stability. Those are things I see a lot. Does that mean that you need to have stability or you're going to overreact? No, but if I notice my tension going up, I can identify, oh yeah, my need for collaboration isn't being met right now. I can give myself grace. I can make adjustments to my approach to request that collaboration, or just pause for a second and recognize, hey, this is really hard right now because I'm having this need that's really important to me not being met. And then I'm going to approach the situation with more realistic expectations for myself. And I just mentioned noticing tension. If right now you could do a quick body scan and just see what sensations are going on right this very second. Or when I said, remember a time when you got stressed earlier, did you notice anything? Like, which muscles get tense? What's your posture like? What other sensations do you notice? Any buzzing or heat or cold going on in your body somewhere? Those are our clues to watch out for throughout the day. For me, it's tension in my jaw and tension in my shoulders. I will hunch my shoulders up and I will start clenching my jaw when I'm getting stressed. And I catch those really quick now, but it took some practice. But if you think about a whistling kettle, as it starts to heat up, it makes a little bit noise, a little bit more noise, a little bit more, and then it screams, right? If you take it off the heat before that, you prevent the whistle. That's the same as paying attention to those specific spots in your body where your tension is stored, gives you that information. And so you're like, okay, I'm getting a little tense. And then you can do something for yourself. You can't eliminate all the stressors. You can't eliminate all the emails or phone calls or requests from other people, but you can pause and just take that mental care of yourself by like, okay, I'm feeling a little tense, which brings me to whether or not that reaction was actually taking care of you and keeping you safe. So if you were having a big reaction to something, if you got really annoyed about a situation, yes, sometimes our expectations are foolish, and those expectations are data. They're information. They're the avenue for actual problem solving so that we can address the unmet need, the threatened value, without letting ourselves be harsh to someone else or being harsh to ourselves. I love this quote by Terry Real. There is nothing harshness does that kindness doesn't do better. And this applies directed inward or outward. There is no good reason to be harsh to yourself. You are not going to abuse yourself into a happy, healthy life. Okay, so just try to be more kind. And that's why we want this information. How do we actually solve this problem that doesn't lead to yelling at someone? Okay, back to the stressful situation. Your reaction was a combination of your values, your expectations, your needs, and your capacity. I'd also add skills, but honestly, we do a pretty good job when we have the capacity to, even if we don't have all the skills we need. And that capacity is that threat bucket. When you have unmet needs, it shrinks the capacity, but you could have all your needs being met and still have way too much piled on your shoulders because life is like that sometimes. And so the capacity is kind of a two-way street. And you notice that I delineated values and expectations as like personality. They're a little bit more stable over time, than our current state, which can change minute to minute. I don't know if you've ever heard of HALT, hungry, angry, lower, lonely, or tired, HALT. Those are signs to stop and go take care of yourself before you're going to end up doing something destructive or have a conversation that is not going to go well. But our values and expectations do absolutely change over time, and you can do that intentionally, or you can let it happen to you. But your personality isn't permanent, but it's just more stable than your current state. Okay. And we are responsible in some ways for all 4 of these things. We have people in our lives, they have their own values, their expectations, their needs and capacities. That complicates things. There's an interplay. We can't control other people as much as sometimes we would like to, but we can make skillful requests. We can recognize our own capacity and let people know, hey, I'm not available for that right now. We can change our minds about commitments we've made, and we can update our expectations. So all of those things are challenging. I don't mean to downplay how challenging they are, but it means there's a lot more influence over our state and our stress load than we think there is. And that's the good news. So I'm curious if you want to share a situation where you've been stressed recently, and I can pause the recording for a second. Okay, so it's helpful to pay attention when there's stressful situations and start to put them into categories, just so that you know, like, oh, this is a situation that stresses me out. You're not going to go and stop and analyze every single thing that bothers you in a day, but there's going to be, if you just start paying attention, you're going to notice certain categories like feeling behind. Do I need to put more time in my schedule because it takes me forever to get out the door, and then I'm stressed every single time I leave the house? So I need to know that it takes me more than 5 minutes once I say, okay, let's go, to actually leave. So you have to add that extra 5 minutes in. Finding those categories then sometimes makes it really easy to address them. Some of them are trickier than others, but knowing which categories bother you can really help. I'm going to move on to this other tool for regulation of completing the stress cycle, but it's important to know that dissociating and compartmentalizing are also healthy coping strategies. So you're not doing something wrong if you ignore something for right now. Just don't ignore it forever. And if it doesn't feel good to go into your body, sometimes it doesn't, just noticing is very caring. Like, what am I feeling right now, without trying to change it? Because a lot of us have been controlled a lot in our lives. And so even trying to make yourself breathe better can be stressful. So I'm just letting you know, if that's been you and everyone's always telling you to take a deep breath and you're like, please don't make me take a deep breath, I'm giving you permission. Sometimes that doesn't feel good for certain nervous systems. So the noticing is the part that I'm encouraging, not necessarily changing anything. So I may know that my jaw is getting tense. I may know that my shoulders are up, and sometimes it feels good to put them down, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'm like, nope, I'm staying armed. So the first lever was reducing stress. This is the second side, completing the stress cycle. So when an animal is chased for their life and they run and then it's over and they get to safety, they shake it off a lot of times. A lot of animals, especially dogs, you'll see them do a big yawn or a big shake to shake it off. Same with deer or bunnies or other, prey animals. That stress cycle, that's how they complete it, and then they go back to their life. So even though their lives are actually much more stressful than ours from an actual physical danger perspective, they're not in chronic stress the way we are, because we hang on to it. So these are some different ways that have been proven to complete the stress cycle. So doing a fun physical activity, not punishing yourself in the gym, but like, a 30-second dance break. And be silly, move your body however you want. A lot of times, because I carry so much tension in my shoulders when I'm walking, sometimes I just like wiggle my arms all crazy just to like loosen up the shoulders a little bit. Doing something creative, laughing. I don't know if you've ever been really stressed and then you just start laughing uncontrollably about something that like is not really that funny, and you're like literally crying, laughing. That's your body getting those stress hormones out. And same with actual crying. There's a lot of sweating, and tears are really good at metabolizing stress hormones. Going and cuddling, or tend and befriend, they call it. So sometimes holding a stuffed animal, or going and petting your dog, or being cuddled, asking someone to cuddle you, go get a hug. And that's really good for completing the stress cycle. Yelling really loud, again, that's an instinctual thing we sometimes do when we're really fed up. We're just like, like that's really good for you if you can do that somewhere safely. Shaking, like I mentioned, the dogs do, humans can do that. Going and taking a nap. I don't know if you've ever been really stressed and then you just like fall asleep. That's normal. And there's other things that you have identified for yourself that are helpful. So that's not scrolling on social media. That's a pause. That's a dissociation, which, like I said, isn't unhealthy, but it doesn't complete the stress cycle. It doesn't move those stress hormones through your body and give your nervous system the message, we're safe now. That's the thing we're trying to do with completing the stress cycle, is letting your nervous system know. So some other ways that we can tell our nervous system we're safe right now physically is bilateral stimulation. So my favorite is a butterfly hug. What's great about it is this is very similar to EMDR because you can see it with your right and left eye, you can hear it with your right and left ear, and then you feel it with your right and left side of your body. So it's hitting all three of those at the same time. So if you're ever feeling any, even just a tiny bit stressed, it may feel a little bit silly, but a butterfly hug is really effective for that bilateral stimulation. Another bilateral stimulation that I love, I have bean bags. If you want one, let me know because I will make you one, but you just pass them left to right. You cross the midline and you just pass it from right hand to left hand. And that crossing the midline is making your left and right brain talk to each other. So it's helping metabolize the stress hormones, and it's helping your brain make sense of we're safe right now. Pelvic floor, your jaw and your pelvic floor are actually, the tension is one. So you can't have one tense and not the other. And so you can do what they call horse lips. I'm gonna be really silly for a second. I don't know why I felt silly doing that, but you can do that and feel the relaxation. If you're someone who works out a lot and you're in tune with your pelvic floor, you can sit and like relax it. Something I love about that is no one knows you're doing that. You know, you could be in a stressful board meeting or an interrogation and you could relax your pelvic floor and no one knows that you're doing that. So that's a great way to send your body that signal of like, I'm safe right now. And then the last one is positive pressure. Oh, I skipped peripheral vision. Let your gaze soften a little bit. And again, you can still maintain eye contact, but you just notice, how much can I see in this room? How much can I see? And you can imagine that you can see more than what you can actually see. And that tells your body it's the opposite of that tunnel vision that happens when we have adrenaline. So it's really good. Positive pressure is the last one. There's different chakras, right, in your body. Everyone has like a favorite. I always do like the solar plexus. So I put my hand there and when I'm breathing, I just am like resisting the breathing a little bit. And it produces oxytocin. It's like giving yourself a hug. So if you feel silly doing like an actual hug, you can just put your hand over your heart and breathe for a second and feel really good, and notice that some of the tension will bleed away in your shoulders or your jaw, even if you're not making it happen. So that is the completing the stress cycle part. The last thing is that if you are too depleted, you will get burnout. And so you need to recharge. So it's not just taking things off your plate, but adding things onto your plate that recharge you. So physical rest is the one we think of, like, I need more sleep. But sometimes you can't get more sleep, or sometimes that's just not what you need, but you can do other things. So you can sit down and just feel how good it feels to sit down. Like, you can take a physical rest that is not a 3-hour nap. Mental rest, letting go of swirling thoughts, having focus time, having that flow state. That's what we're going after when we're scrolling on social media, because it's a little bit of a distraction, but it's not a true flow state. And so going and doing something that helps you get into flow state is better. And that can overlap with like a creative rest, doing art or doing solvable problems. So that's why people really love like doing like a Sudoku or playing Tetris or something like that, because it fully engages your brain and it's a solvable problem and you can feel accomplished at the end of it. So pick a game that's not frustrating if that's what you're doing. Sensory rest, having quiet, going out in nature and hearing actual nature noises. It's amazing for the nervous system. We're really built to hear bird sounds and hear wind. And it's so much more comfortable. Like, I was hot in my house today and I was like, I really should just move my laptop outside instead of turning on the AC, because then I would get all that fresh air. And then there was no fresh air outside. It was really sad. It's wildfire smoke again. Social emotional rest, connecting with other people, whether that's you supporting them or being supported by them, hopefully reciprocal over time, but just feeling that connection. And there are different people we call for different types of connection where we're more likely to be successful. And then lastly, spiritual rest. It's called that because that's what most people think of, connecting to something greater than ourselves. But volunteering, canvassing for a political cause, making a phone call, it makes us realize that our problems aren't as big as they feel, because we're connecting to that bigger us, that bigger problems and systems. And it reminds us that we're just part of the system. So there are really great reasons behind each of these types of rests that were identified. But a lot of times, if you look at this list, it will jump out at you like, oh, that sounds really good. I really want to go do a puzzle right now, or I really want to go paint something. And then go make sure that happens. Don't just let that be that would be fun to do someday. Go put it on your calendar. And then, like I said, you can stack these up. You could go paint with a friend or go on a walk outside and do some fun physical activity with other people or with babies, or what is it, cat yoga, where the cats crawl on you while you're doing yoga. You can stack these things. So you don't need a ton of time, even if you feel very depleted and a lot of these jump out, like, oh, I'd love a lot of those things. Just let yourself be a little creative and stack them up. And I have a handout that I can send out after that's for, it has 3 pages on identifying stressors and then reducing stress. Hopefully your takeaway is that understanding and compassion are much more powerful than willpower. Like, I just need to knock it off is not going to be your path to success. There's a lot of ancillary benefits to doing these things. Even if you do continue to yell at your family, you will have more, lower blood pressure and like better sleep. So it's worth doing it. And because it's an ongoing process. So that's part of the reason I love the ancillary benefits, because yes, oh, I yelled 3 more times this week, so I need to just give up. Nope, it's an ongoing process. And at least I felt better. And at least I had a tool at the end. So next month, we're going to be talking about co-parenting. If you've ever argued with your partner about how to raise your kid or dog, we talk about how to get on the same page. And then these are some other ways I work with people. You can find me on Instagram at Marcy H Coaching. Thank you.